Hey everybody! So we're gonna do a little quick two-part note here. That's gonna look at two of the last topics we need to look at for the colonial era. One will be the Great Awakening. Okay, we'll totally let more in class. We're gonna cut this in half. The other part will be the French Indian War, also known as 7 Years' War, which will be the last topic we look at before we get into the era of the Revolution. So let's start going on here, ladies and gentlemen. We'll get this train rolling. First off, remember how ideas and concepts spread, right? So we're looking at this eventual truck all the way to rebellion and to an American Revolution. So a lot of different ideas and concepts are going to happen during this Great Awakening period and the 1700s that will lead to its eventual rebellion. First, the Great Awakening is a spiritual movement. Okay, it's a moment of spiritual growth that brought this big national identity to colonial America. We're talking a little bit off and on about how the colonists are kind of making their own identity here and there. Well, this religious identity will be part of that. And so there were only a few really established churches that existed in colonial America. You had the Puritans, you had the Anglican Church, obviously the official quote unquote church, right? And then you had a few other groups that were the Quakers and other religious freedom groups there. But what this Great Awakening was essentially Christians kind of going to these big revival meetings, these huge gatherings for days at a time to worship, pray, and it wasn't being part of the established church that already existed. As in the 1730s and 1740s, we're creeping closer and closer to 1776. And so we know this first Great Awakening is this big time when people really started getting religious and going to these big religious revivals. Now, here's the reason for it is that Puritan Church array is that it was really, really boring, right? We had to have the stick with the feather on, all that kind of stuff. And so it was really dry and dull and distant. People really couldn't connect to it all, right? They were being told a bunch of stuff and do this and follow this and be this, and that was it, okay? And a lot of preachers felt that people need to be more concerned with inner emotions as opposed to religious behavior. So the Puritans always told you, act a certain way, be a certain way, do a certain thing, inspire your neighbors, whatever it might be, right? Anglican Church, do a certain thing, don't be too Puritan, etc. They're like, get in touch with your own religion, be your own religion, do religion for you versus for somebody else. A lot of people could start reading, and especially in New England, even in Pennsylvania, and they could read the Bible for themselves and figure out what they wanted in the religion. So big people we got to look at from the Great Awakening. First one will be named George Whitefield, this dude right here. He's a big name preacher in London. He's going to be alive. Made a lot of trips over to the Americas to preach and talk to people. And he was called this big giant because he had this huge booming voice. I mean, this guy would get in front of 3, 4, 5, 6,000 people at a time out in the woods somewhere and be preaching to them. And it's kind of one of the first ever big evangelists that he had. So he was kind of giving huge speeches, huge sermons to people of all different walks of life. And in a way, he's kind of given credit for the Great Awakening, creating these big religious revivals that existed. We have another one named Jonathan Edwards, who was very famous for his sermon called "Sinners in the Hand of an Angry God." Edwards was very much more hell-based. He's kind of like, if you don't be a good person, you're going to hell. And kind of that idea of scaring people who are sinners to salvation. So he says things like, the God that holds you in a pit of hell, much as one holds a spider, a loathsome insect over the fire, abhors you. His wrath towards you burns like a fire. Upon you as worthy as nothing else be cast into the fire. So in a way, they're trying to scare people in this Great Awakening. This Jonathan Edwards is in being good people and at the hands of an angry God instead. So these were people who, Jonathan Edwards starts in Massachusetts and eventually follows other colonies. Whitefield was this traveling preacher from London. He spread these causes all over the place, especially in the southern counties, especially though. And so both these guys are part of this big movement. And we'll talk more about this in class, but the really outcome of this whole deal is that we start seeing a lot of deep religious convictions in the colonies that are different than those in England. And it's our first example of breaking away too, because instead of being Puritan or being Anglican, we're doing something totally different. And so, they're confronting this regular authority you have and saying, nah, not feeling it, right? And breaking away. So political power, he said, doesn't really reside with the English church or English monarchs, but with the colonists. So it's kind of their way of being self-governing in a way. And so this Great Awakening, this era of religious revival is kind of an example of how the colonists are becoming more their own and less English in a way. And we'll kind of connect that to our next event, will be the French Indian War, which will be the last thing we look at in this unit, going from 1756-16 to 1763. And we would call this first kind of Great Empire War because it's the French and the British fighting for who's going to be in charge. So the big question we talk about is, 1763, when this war ends, is a turning point for British colonial relationship. We kind of started seeing the whole English colonial relationship drift apart a little bit. We started seeing this idea kind of be more and more independent, the colonies. And the question is, does this war kind of push us over the edge? So here we have America, North America in 1750. So you can see where the British claims are up here. Henry Hudson claimed this bay up here. New France, this little sliver going St. Lawrence all the way down to Mississippi, and then Louisiana here, New Spain. And here's the British colonies. Now, the area that's kind of questioned is right here in the Ohio River Valley. And that's why that river was on your geography quiz you guys did. The Ohio River Valley right here in what is now Ohio and Tennessee, Kentucky, etc. Those areas right down here, and Indiana as well. And both France and Great Britain gave claim to that chunk of land right there. And that's the little chunk of land that's going to cause a lot of problems for these two countries. And so in the middle, these two countries are competing for these land claims. The biggest thing the French wanted were the trapping routes. They wanted the trapping routes, the trade routes. Native Americans in the Ohio Valley, Americans, they were basically living off the fur trade and using those beaver pelts, those kind of things. The English colonists had their own problem. They started having more and more population come over and more population settle in the colonies. So they needed more and more space. As they built bigger and bigger farms, needed more area, they were pushing out this way from the coast into that Ohio Valley. And also their trade issues too, because, British did, while not as much trade as France, wasn't the main part of their relationship, they did trade with Native Americans as well. And so there are two big questions we have, two big issues that the French and the British are having. So we're set up here. So the French kind of give the smart idea, hey, we're going to put a bunch of forts out here on this land to protect our fur trade. The forts are there for our traders, for our people who are off watching our trade routes, those kind of things. And the forts were on some of the land the English claimed was theirs as well. Well, you have Virginia Governor Dinwiddie. He was a governor in the 1740s, 1750s, and he sends this young 18-year-old colonial militiaman named George Washington out there. Now, George Washington is a colonel in the Virginia militia. He's read. He's a higher up guy. He's a gentleman, if you will. And so he goes to deliver this protest to the French. They bring this protest saying, hey, you guys got to get up this land. It's not yours. We lay claim to this. Bye-bye. The French say, bye-bye, go away, and it's ignored. So the British sent a party, actual redcoats, to make this big fort on the site of modern Pittsburgh. So look where Pittsburgh is today in Ohio. And so this is where we're going to start seeing this first conflict. Now, what happens is the clash here is somewhere around here. So what happens is Washington builds a place called Fort Necessity. French have Fort Duquesne up here, and what goes down is an attack. So you have Washington, some of his Native American allies. They get a skirmish with the French. Washington has bullet holes in his coat and stuff. And by the end, you have this Native American chief named the Half King, who is allied and one of the people with Washington. And supposedly this Native American smashes the skull of the officer in charge of the French, and Washington hands his brains, all that kind of stuff. And it's like, oh crap, a war is on now. And the French are like, well, this guy was giving you a peace message, and a lot of things got messed up here. During this whole battle, the British commander was shot and killed. And so now George Washington is in charge of this, little Fort Necessity. And now when you say Fort Necessity, it's not much of a fort. Here's what it probably looked like. It was literally a building inside a little stockade, built in the worst place you can. He built his fort on the low ground, and all around it you see trees and stuff where the French come up. And so, the French, make their sight. They're quickly overwhelmed as we go here, and there's a huge incident where the French come and attack this fort, and the soldiers that are with Washington, they give up, they run away, they hide in the storerooms and get drunk on wine and brandy and stuff, and it's all a big mess. And Washington's come out waving a white flag and surrender to the French. And so Washington signs for papers. Remember, he's been fighting for a long time. He's dark, it's dreary, he can't read, he doesn't read, it's all written in French. He knows French, but not very well. And the papers actually state that Washington himself, as the commander, allowed the assassination of that French officer and takes full credit for starting a conflict between France and Great Britain. So in a way, George Washington starts the French-Indian War. At least that's kind of how it kind of works out. What else is going on down in Virginia? Okay, you have up in Albany, up in New York, Benjamin Franklin from Pennsylvania getting representatives from different states together. New England, New York, Maryland, Pennsylvania had this very, very famous cartoon out here where they had the Albany Congress, where they're talking with the Iroquois about who they're going to work with, who they're going to trade with, because their little concerns are in terms of Native American alliances and who's going to work with them. So I apologize for this right here. I hit the wrong button. And so these states get together to make sure that, one, they have relationships with different Native American groups that they need to work with. So they, they broke up, the Iroquois broke relations with Britain, threatened to trade with the French. And so the different Native American groups, who was going to back up the British or the French, Franklin wants to get a group of people together to figure out if the colonies can all join together and make an alliance, if you will, make a joint treaty to help defend themselves against French or the Native Americans, who it might be, that might attack. And so that's what this Albany Congress happens. It was a very famous cartoon, the first political cartoon in America, called Join or Die. We see different parts of the snake here. So we have all parts of the colonies together to actually make this thing work. What Britain decided to do in 1755 was to eliminate all French presence in North America. So as this conflict went on, you have General Edward Braddock, who was brought over from England, and he basically walks in with British redcoats and starts, getting rid of people. Pretty much, we're trying to do as best he can. And so he tries to evict the French from Ohio Valley in Canada. He attacks the Ohio Valley, Mohawk Valley, New York, Acadia, which is going to be eastern Canada. Unfortunately, he's actually killed out in the Ohio Valley, about 10 miles from Fort Duquesne, by 1,500 French Indian forces. So he's dead. The only time they have British success at all is up in Acadia, which is in Canada, where they took over part of Canada, and they actually took all the French people that were there and expelled all down to New Orleans. So New Orleans now becomes the Cajun people, so Acadia, Cajun. And so Cajuns in France became from that part of Canada. So it's kind of create their little culture outside of New Orleans. War actually doesn't get declared until 1756, and Native American tribes exploit both sides, who they're going to work with, who they're going to side with. So you have Lord Loudon on the British side, you have Marquis de Montcalm on the French side, and Native American tribes decide who they're going to work with. So the English colonists, the Americans have this choice, right? The English colonists, English, want to use their land for fur trading and farming. They think the Americans are quote-unquote savages. They want to expand their territory and have this huge growing population. So the French colonists, they want to use your land for fur trading, but not take it over, right? They've married your families. They have missionaries living through all kind of stuff and have a pretty small population. It's pretty clear who a lot of people would think would be the logical ones to ally with, and that's the French. The French join up, ally with the Algonquin tribes, which is the Delaware, because they traded with the group for so long, and the Algonquin were seriously worried about losing land to the British. They'd seen in different situations, whether it be in New England or for themselves or in Virginia, where English colonists have encroached on their lands and been taken over. And so we have this official war claim started in 1756, and it's being fought on almost everywhere. So it's being fought in the Americas over here, obviously where the war kind of starts up. It's also being fought in Europe, where it's called the 7 Years' War. It's being fought in Asia and in India and the South Pacific as well, and also a little bit in the coast of Africa too. So in a way, it's the first world war is being fought just about everywhere due to being a war about colonies essentially. Early on, the French really had a lot of success because they knew what they were doing. I showed a video on this in class example, but the French utilized their Native American allies to attack and fight like Native American would. These British redcoats are very much used to marching in formation, fighting open fields outside of cities. There was English rule that you didn't fight in cities. You fought outside on fields, right? And whoever lost the land. Well, that's not how it works. So as these guys are marching in bright red coats down these roads and these cow paths, they would ambush and sneak attacks and stuff to take out the British soldiers. And so that's one of the ways that the French and Native Americans originally started putting a lot of losses on the British. So you kind of see what the British intentions also were too. Whereas the British Army was built of two different people. You had the redcoats from Britain who came over, who thought they were awesome and amazing, and you have the colonial militias, who are these guys who all got together with their guns and said, "Okay, let's go kill me some Frenchies." And so the methods of fighting were very, very different. The British were technically in charge as a British colony. They were used to marching in formation, and they would bayonet charge, all that kind of stuff. They had these officers who thought they were in charge of everything, were being appointed or had risen to the ranks. They had a lot of drills and tough discipline and had to look right and dress right, all that kind of stuff. And the British also thought that the colonists should pay for the defense. And a lot of times the officers were very prima donna, like they thought they were better than everybody else. They had tea service and luggage and all that kind of stuff. I mean, officers in the British Army were usually upper class people, and I felt they should be treated like upper class people. Whereas the colonials, they had grown up with Native Americans. They lived with Native Americans. They knew that guerrilla style tactic. They elected their own leaders who they thought was best. They had no protocols, no uniforms. They didn't care, right? They swore, they stunk, they did all that kind of stuff. It didn't matter. And the biggest part is they don't want to pay more taxes. They're like, hey, we're English. You're here helping us. We're all English together. We should have to pay for you. And it was very much a not professional kind of situation. So these two groups already didn't like each other, trying to fight against the French. So William Pitt in 1757 becomes the new foreign minister for England. And he says, okay, how can we fix this problem? Because we're losing this war. He basically offered the colonials a compromise. He said, listen, colonial loyalty, military cooperation, Britain's going to give back the colonial assemblies, give back the colonial governments that are there, they're repay their costs they paid for the military action. They're going to repay them, make sure that the militias get paid. That's all be good. Also, get Lord Loudon because he's kind of a jerk, basically is what it was. And the idea is to fix that problem. Results: you have more colonial morale happening. Colonials are going to fight better, and the war starts turning towards the side of England. So we have a lot of victories for the English up here in Canada. They kind of marched into Canada, started taking areas over up here. They have victories out in the Ohio Valley. And by the end, right, British signed a treaty. What really kind of ties the British signed a treaty with the Algonquin tribes in Ohio. Basically, the treaty promises the Algonquin that if they left the French, the British would not take their land. If the Algonquins renew the treaty, the British would make sure that they would put a wall up, a line up, something that says English people cannot go past this area. The British also allied themselves with the Iroquois tribes too, who hated the Algonquin, which helped out the British against the French and the Algonquin allies, because they lost those tribes in the Ohio Valley, they lost that area, and the dominoes started falling. The chapter of Fort Duquesne called it Fort Pitt. Nowadays it's Pittsburgh, hence why you kind of see that happening there. And they go in French Canada and start winning there. They capture all the big cities, and the few big cities they had in Canada, so Quebec and Fort Niagara and Montreal. In fact, in Montreal, also had a scale up of a cliff essentially off St. Lawrence Seaway. And so in these 2 years, by 1760, England controlled essentially all of North America, and most of the fighting in North America was done. The war was still going on in Europe, though it went on for 3 more years. And eventually in 1763, the Treaty of Paris was signed. So here's what happened. Spain had joined in with France, by the way. So that was kind of their mistake, but we'll talk about that in a second. France lost all Canadian possessions, lost Empire India, and all claims east of the Mississippi River. So all they have left now is west of Mississippi. It's all I got left. For the second, Spain got all the French lands west of Mississippi as well, but lost Florida to England. So now England belongs to Florida. Florida belongs to England now, and they lose a lot of areas there, but gain probably Mississippi and New Orleans area. So that helps them a little bit. England got all the French lands to Canada, all the Caribbean slave trade and commercial rights to India. So in the end, England's the big winner here, and France loses big time. So there's our picture now, 1763, 13 years after the last one, where it went from being, the French colonies along here and over here to now being the English and the Spanish. And that's it. We don't have any more French claims except for in the Caribbean now. And that's going to be all their French claims are. So the effects of the war on Britain is that one, she's a big colonial empire now, which is great for Great Britain. Problem is they had to pay a lot of money to get it. They had to send redcoats over, right? Because the colonial militias couldn't do it by themselves. And they had to pay those colonial militias and go into debt to make that happen. So there's a problem there, right? You got to find a way to pay that debt off, because you can't ask the people in England to pay off debt that was incurred by fighting the colonies. Okay? You have Britain also has some, contempt for the colonials, right? The fact that the colonials didn't maybe respect the British all the time was kind of a little sucker punch to them. They felt hurt by that, and they felt that the colonials should be more thankful for them helping. And so England really felt there was to be a major organization of the empire, and that's going to be a big change we're going to see coming forward here. Now the colonials, on the other hand, were really united now. Instead of it being just different colonies fighting by themselves, they got together, right? Whether it be the Albany Plan with Franklin, or just colonial militias fighting side by side in these battles, now you have kind of a united colonies kind of thing. And it's cool because, colonials from Massachusetts might not have met colonials from Virginia otherwise, but now they fought together. And not only did they all fight together, they all didn't like the British together either, because they all were impacted by the British Army Corps thinking they're better than everybody. And so that bitter feelings for the British intensify because, the way that they were treated during the conflict. We're going to leave it there, ladies and gentlemen. We'll see the effect of this as we start a new unit. Thank you very much for watching. I really, really appreciate it from you guys. Make sure you have your notes done so we use this in class with the primary sources and see kind of the effects of this are overall. Thank you very much, guys. Have a great day.